Pen at the ready, we're going to map out the Henrys. To make it easier to remember all the Henrys, I like to separate them out into the first three, the next three, and then the last two. I think that's slightly easier, but we have to go all the way back to 1066, when William the Conqueror becomes William I of England. And he has a son, and his name's William, and he's William Rufus. Doesn't have an heir when he's killed in a accident in the New Forest. But his brother Henry takes over the job, and he becomes our first Henry, Henry I. Now, Henry had a son, but he was killed in the White Ship disaster, and his only legitimate heir when he died was Matilda. But, well, Matilda was a woman, and she didn't get the throne. It went instead to her cousin Stephen. Now, they fought like mad during the anarchy, the Civil War. It was a horrendous time. But then it was decided that Stephen, when he died, would hand the crown over to Matilda's son, and he was our second Henry, Henry II. Henry had a son who was Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, but he didn't have any heir, so it was passed on to John, Bad King John. Bad King John had a son, and he was called Henry, and he's our third Henry. So there's our first three. We'll do a time check there. 1216 was when Henry came to the throne. Okay, there weren't many Henrys for a while. We had 3 Edwards. I'm going to run out of time if I write them all out. 3 Edwards and a Richard. Now, Richard was deposed, usurped by a chap called Henry Bolingbroke, Henry IV. He was, via John of Gaunt, a descendant of Edward III. Now, he had a son, and his name was Henry. He was Henry V, our warrior at Agincourt. And he had a son, and he was Henry VI, not quite so warrior-like. This is the time of the War of the Roses. Up here was 1399. So this is all the War of the Roses stuff. And he was usurped by a chap called Edward. Now, Edward was also a descendant of Edward III through the York line, and he became Edward IV. He had a son. He was Edward V, but he was one of the princes in the Tower. He disappeared, and Edward's brother Richard III. Edward's brother Richard became Richard. Oh, hang on, we've gone off camera. Richard III. Richard III had a big fight with Henry Tudor, and Henry got the throne, and Henry became Henry VII, and he had a son, and he became Henry VIII. So there you go, 7 and 8.